Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 10th, 2021, recorded on 1:50 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including the potential for a tropical depression or storm may be forming in the Gulf of Mexico sometime within the next several days. So let's go ahead and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, again, we noticed that we have pretty strong upper level winds that are cutting across most of the main development region at this time, as we'd expect for this time of the year. We also have a very big plume of Saharan air that is making its way all the way through, now encompassing Barbados and the Lesser Antilles. This will continue moving westward over the next several days, and this will impact the islands, and certainly some of it has already made its way there, but it's just not showing up really on the satellite images. But this will be making its way into the Caribbean over the next several days and kind of dry this area out. And in the meantime, we have a big upper level system over Indianapolis and kind of over Illinois right now, producing a lot of rain, a lot of flash flooding problems for portions of Arkansas, Mississippi, even Alabama to an extent, and that will be lifting off over the next several days. So thank goodness for that. And then we turn our attention now towards this area over the next several days. You can already notice that we have a broad clustering of showers and thunderstorms in the eastern Pacific right here. And this is what some of the models are kind of hinging on for development. This broad upper level kind of gyre, this Central American gyre, has been setting up over the last several days. And where we once expected to develop, or maybe the potential for development down here in, basically near Central America, those chances have faded. And we'll get into that here in a second. So looking at the actual sea surface temperatures for the Gulf of Mexico, we notice that most of the area is running now generally at or above the long-term average, with water temperatures now at about 28 Celsius, making its way now almost to about the 28 north line. So this is definitely lifted further northward over the last several weeks, as we kind of thought everything would. You notice that some of these cooler sea surface temperatures that were up here near the shelf waters, those have rebounded quite nicely. Now water temperatures are pretty much at about 27 Celsius. So they are warm enough to support tropical cyclones in this area. And for that matter, sitting off here near the Tampa Bay region, water temperatures have warmed to near about 90 degrees in the shelf waters there. Bay of Campeche, again, sitting roughly about, closer to 28 to 29 Celsius. So again, we're warming up very nicely, and we'll continue to see that warm up occur over the next several weeks. Again, not really seeing anything that would really shunt that development from occurring. Now, what are the bigger things here? This is the upper ocean heat content map, and this was updated as of this morning. And again, real quickly for what we're looking at here, basically anywhere within the lighter blue colors onwards is the warmer colors, basically towards the right of the scale, you get towards the warmer colors. This basically represents the tropical cyclone heat potential. As tropical cyclones go over water, they upwell cooler water naturally. But having high upper ocean heat content, which is what these warmer colors represent, tropical cyclones are not going to upwell cooler water. Instead, they upwell warmer water, and it keeps their engine running, so to speak. And where we see a great concentration of upper ocean heat content at the moment is mainly kind of focused here and centralized within the Caribbean and the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. As we can see, that we do have a pretty high area, especially right now off the Yucatan Peninsula here, off the southeast tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, kind of near Jamaica, and then another kind of centralized location here, making its way with this plume of 28 to 29 degrees Celsius waters in the central Gulf. But this is really where I'm paying attention to. And this area does have some higher upper ocean heat content values. It's been kind of gaining attraction over the last several days, and I think that certainly has some potential going forward with potential development here. So again, this whole area is running with pretty decent upper ocean heat content, with the exception of right near the coastline here, where upper ocean heat content is a bit limited because of those cooler shelf waters. But again, those even will warm over the next several days. And then across the main development region right now, we don't really see much, especially in the far eastern main development region. But once you start getting past about 60 west here, this is where your highest upper ocean heat content really resides. From about 60 west and above about 10 north there at that point, you can kind of follow the lip around of the Gulf Stream here. That's the Gulf Stream all the way out through there. But again, the main development region right now should be shut down for the most part for the month of June. But I do suspect that things will start changing for the upcoming favorability by the time we start getting into the later part of June and then certainly into July and August. So the National Hurricane Center here on the 5-day tropical weather outlook, nothing for the Atlantic Basin as we would suspect. I think that we will start to see development chances go up here in the southwestern Bay of Gulf of Mexico and the southern Bay of Campeche because we probably will see at least something try to develop down in that region. But then in the Eastern Pacific Basin, we are watching two systems, one with a 40%, or both of these now with a 40% chance of development. This is Invest Area 92E, which is kind of way out here. I believe that we did, I think this is the old remnants of 92E. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it is. And this is from that Central American gyre. And again, we saw development chances kind of snake its way from here. Now it's kind of all the way over here. And development chances, I think, will continue to snake towards the west here because I just simply don't think we're going to get development in this area and cross over like some of the models have been indicating over the last several days. But we'll discuss that here in just a moment, looking at everything. But those are the two systems we'll be watching, and this isn't really of much concern. But this will be something, again, heavy rainfall is the most primary threat right now for portions of Central America and Mexico. But other than that, this really should not pose much of a land concern, at least for the next couple of days or so. Now, what I did find interesting here, this is basically we're looking at the Kelvin wave forecast, and this is we have an active phase of the Kelvin wave that is passing over the Atlantic Basin right now. Basically, what this is, the active phase basically promotes upward rising air, or upward moving air, and a reduced vertical wind shear across that area temporarily. And we have a suppressed phase over the Caribbean, basically over the Eastern Pacific and over parts of the Caribbean. And the suppressed phase typically increases vertical wind shear, and it is associated with sinking motion in the atmosphere. And that could kind of be why that we don't really have a lot developing in this area. We just don't have the favorability in terms of the upward moving air. The Kelvin wave, we did have an active phase that passed over several days ago, but now this will be moving towards the east, and then this will eventually come off and impact Africa over the next several days. And with that, we could see the increase of tropical waves that come off. And if you kind of go back to the satellite loop here, we do notice that there is a fairly strong tropical wave right now that is kind of coming off across that area. And with that being said, we'll have to watch this over the next several days. Not really expecting development, but the models do kind of indicate that maybe an area of low pressure does try to get established, but then quickly dissipate with all the Saharan air and cooler sea surface temperatures. It certainly does not look like this will be developing, but we'll just monitor it. But certainly increased tropical waves and the vigorousness of them over the next several days could be expected as this Kelvin wave passes over Africa. And again, it's usually a day or two after that we start to kind of notice that impact within the within the actual atmosphere. So if we look here at the 12Z GFS forecast, again, this is the 12Z run value for 2 p.m. this afternoon, the 150 millibar vorticity, basically the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. And as you go higher up in the scale, you're getting in towards the higher cyclonic vorticity amounts here. And again, what we're kind of looking at is generally here that we're looking here at, again, 2 p.m. this afternoon. We notice this very broad gyre that's kind of located right now over Central America and parts of Mexico at the moment. And again, this is kind of responsible for this Central American gyre that's been setting up and development chances. Now, if we kind of go forth in time, now this is kind of what we were talking about over the last several days, or really just a little bit ago, with the potential of development down here, but not really seeing much of a threat here. Now, if we notice here that we do try to get an area of consolidated vorticity to develop here south of Mexico within about the next 36 hours, and if we kind of continue to go forward, again, this area is very broad, and you notice it doesn't really do much until we start to get here roughly really by about Thursday of this upcoming week. And so this would be basically a week from today, we start to get an increased area of cyclonic vorticity in the background environment. And again, this is a very long genesis process. And again, these Central American gyres typically take a very long time to actually develop anything, if they even do develop a system at all. So it definitely takes a lot of time for these systems to develop. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we just haven't seen anything develop at the moment. It takes a while. In the background environment, it's only June 10th, and the background environment necessarily still isn't all that favored. right now. Now, conditions will be changing, and I do foresee that, but we notice that it takes a long time, and the GFS forecast does try to spin up two tropical cyclones, one in the Bay of Campeche and one here off the tip of Mexico. And this, would be kind of an interesting setup as you have two systems, one here and one here. And again, we could be looking at the potential for land impacts from these if indeed these do form. This would be out here by about 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Saturday. So we're looking, beyond a week out at this point, but the modeling does seem to agree that something may end up kind of developing down there. Now, one of the things, if we look here at the relative humidity in the middle part of the atmosphere, really from about 700 to 400 millibars, what we'll notice here is that we do get an increased area of general background vorticity here. And you can kind of see that all this moisture, too, that's going to be pumped into this region could help to spawn that. You can see this moisture plume extends really all the way from the eastern Pacific all the way through into the North Atlantic and off the parts really of Atlantic Canada. So this is a very deep moisture plume that kind of stretches all the way from the eastern Pacific through near Atlantic Canada. But again, this eventually kind of cuts off, and we may end up getting a system that actually does develop. Again, you can kind of see two systems here on the GFS forecast that try to end up developing. Now, again, this is, really far out in time. But if we do look here at the 200 millibar wind pattern on the GFS, at least for the 12Z run here, we kind of move this forward, what you'll typically notice is that we do get an area, we kind of get really two areas of upper level anticyclones, which may go, in fact, to actually help development chances. Now, the European model, for instance, is the 0Z Euro, and it kind of shows a very similar solution where we kind of get two areas of consolidated vorticity to occur really by Friday. You get one here in the Eastern Pacific, and then you get one here in the Bay of Campeche, and eventually that does develop into a tropical cyclone as it approaches land here in the Gulf. Now, the forecast models, again, really differ from this, and we'll see if the 12Z run is kind of current, and it's not. But regardless, the 0Z Euro did have that, and it will be interesting to kind of see. Now, the GFS ensembles here, the mean sail level pressure from the GFS ensembles, again, what you're kind of looking at here, basically, we'll be watching for an area of disturbance also that comes off the Carolina coastline, but I'm just not really seeing much of a threat for land impacts at the moment from that. If anything does develop, it will likely end up moving out across into the open North Atlantic. So I don't really think that we have to worry necessarily about land impacts from that, but we do notice that we do kind of get an area of lower pressures that starts to set up really after day 5 down across this region. We start to see lower than normal pressures. And again, we have a very big heat ridge that will be building out across parts of the Midwest and Southwest United States over the next several days. And then eventually, once that heat ridge collapses, we may see development chances actually start to increase because, again, this ridge right here, what we'll notice is that this ridge, and if we go up to the 500 millibar, if we really go to the 500 millibar vorticity, what we'll notice is that we've got a big ridge over here, and we've also got this ridge over here sitting near the Azores Islands, and this ridge extends all the way over here. And because of that, we have a very weak steering flow that's actually in that environment at that point. And if we go back to the GFS forecast, and we'll go to about hour 132 here, so we'll kind of back this up. And if we kind of just plop down an area within here and get a sounding, if we can, maybe we can't, but if we can't, that will be fine. But either way, here we go. We can kind of see that not only do we have a pretty high shear environment, but we do have a competing steering flow, and this would definitely keep anything really from developing along with the vertical shear. Now, we do have a fairly moist column, but instability is relatively limited, and there's a lot of capping in the atmosphere as well, so not really going to be seeing much in the way of potential for thunderstorm activity, at least through that time. Now, once we start getting after that time, we can start to see that heat ridge begins to kind of abate, and that is when the potential for things actually starts to develop. You can kind of see that heat ridge ends up kind of abating, and we may open the door for potential development down the road in this particular neck of the woods. Now, the European ensembles, again, kind of much in the same way, again, tries to develop an area of low pressure down here in the Eastern Pacific, and this was kind of expected that this area may be the most favored right now because it's not necessarily landlocked. But any storm that does end up developing, it is possible that we do kind of get that to kind of curve around like that, or maybe potentially even kind of come around. So it is possible that we could still see maybe some type of area of concentrated vorticity try to develop here on the northern end of that. And then eventually the models do kind of give it a little bit of a kick here with development in the Gulf here really by Friday. So we'll see if that if in fact does happening, and it's very far out in time, and I'm not really sure that this is going to happen. Again, these Central American gyres, it's very hard for the model to predict because it is really spatially limited by the grid spacing within the models. And again, the GFS is very prone to developing erroneous tropical cyclones when there really is none that is going to develop. So again, it's just really kind of a matter of a fact, like, do we actually get something to develop or do we not? Again, the models do, the operational deterministic runs do agree. There is some ensemble support, but for the most part, development chances seem to be waning a little bit, but we'll just have to see how everything kind of plays out. All right. Well, that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon eating. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.